The Radio Forest Podcast.
Hey, Chad Daniels here.
Chad, what's happening, man? Congratulations on your special.
Oh, thanks.
You're killing it. You just did Rogan. You've been on with Segura, and you've known him for a long time. Something's Burning with Bert, and now Forrest and Boise. You're downhill now, man.
I don't think so. I think the sky's the limit for us. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations on the Netflix special once again. I feel like some comedians are, I've decided to do my special just to YouTube, and I feel like that's a safe way of saying nobody picked it up because Netflix is the peak. How did that conversation work, and how do they decide which comedians to use? I mean, surely there's a lot of things at play there.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how they decide which comedians to use, but for me, in December of 22, I did 2 specials in one night in Madison, Wisconsin. And they bought the second one of those specials. Before they released it, I said, hey, I kind of have this idea about this new area of my life where my daughter's gone to school, my son's getting married, I'm starting a relationship. Let me tighten that hour up and see if you guys will put that out instead. And then they took a look at it and decided that they would. That's the one they went with. And I'm kind of excited about that because it is, the best representation of my life right now.
Empty Nester is on Netflix. I got a question about it. Was your sister really hooked on meth?
Yeah, absolutely. For quite a while, but she's been clean and sober for almost 15 years, has a great family. She is absolutely killing it. So I asked her before, she was at the special, and I asked her before, I'm like, do you mind if I say this? And she goes, I don't care. I'm way past it. And then I looked at her right in the right in the crowd as I said it.
Really?
Yeah.
I had some issues with alcohol and I no longer drink. And I've got 2 young kids, so I'm worried about that age when they start drinking, how I'm going to handle that because I'm worried they might take it as far as me. With that then being in the orbit of your life, did you go through a fear of you're like, man, my kids, because your kids are older, so you've already gone through some things I haven't yet. Was it like those late nights sitting up just worrying that they're going to be exposed to stuff like that?
No, my kids are pretty good. It's like, of course, they're going to be exposed to everything. It's like, in the summer, I spend time at a lake cabin, and sometimes you'll have people bring kids over, and they go, well, my kid can't be on the dock unless they have a life jacket on. It's like, instead of always making them wear a life jacket, why don't you teach them how to swim? It's like that kind of thing, right? But with alcohol, I think it's a little different because all kids are going to try alcohol. I just had to tell my kids, don't do meth, and that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's as easy as it is.
Yeah, it's a little easier to say don't do meth than don't try to drink. So I had it a little easier, yeah.
Yeah, I heard you talk about your cabin on the Middle of Somewhere podcast, but you have another one too. You have Pretend Problems with Chelsea Cook, your girlfriend, who's also a comedian. So how do you fit all of this in? Touring, 2 kids. Obviously, you're an empty nester now, so that frees up some time. But you've got 2 podcasts that you're recording, plus touring, and then doing all the social media stuff. Is it busier than you've ever been?
Yeah, it is. It is because, with social media, you have to stay on top of it or you fall out of the almighty algorithm. Oh, that word makes my eye twitch. But it's actually fun doing the podcast because I've been friends with Cy Amundsen, who I do Middle of Somewhere with forever. And we just kind of use it as a catch-up session. And then with Kelsey, I live with her. So we just go into the office and record the podcast there. So it's not as bad as it sounds. It seems like I'm busier than I am, I think.
And how did Rogan go? I mean, I've seen the episode, but I'm kind of interested on behind-the-scenes stuff that we don't hear. You did a long one, over 2 hours. What time do you get there? What's his setup like there? Because we know he's got, obviously a huge garage and a workout center. So do you do a full tour? Are you hanging out a lot before you go on air? Or you kind of walk in and he starts recording?
No, I walked in and we just chit-chatted and kind of, caught up about life for a little bit and then sat down and chatted. And then you head back and then that night you go into Comedy Mothership, which is the club that he brought down to Austin, and do some sets down there. And it's just it's a fun hang. It's a fun situation. We were talking about like photons and all sorts of stuff on his podcast. And I don't know anything about photons. So I just sat. I was a very good listener.
How was the club? That's a pretty new club. I think maybe just a year old. It's got 2 different rooms. And I've heard that the shows are sold out in advance regardless of who's there because big names are popping in all the time. So how was your experience with performing at the Mothership in Texas?
Yeah, I had a full weekend in the middle of May, and it was really fun. Like, people go there They're like, we're going on vacation. Let's go to Austin. Let's see Austin, Texas, but let's make sure we go to Comedy Mothership. So, and it's based off of the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And that's, where Joe got his start. So it's a really cool system they have running there.
I've seen on Instagram, you've got comments from like Joke World, Josh Wolf follows you, Nick Swartz, and a whole bunch of people. Have you gotten any unexpected DMs from some big names as your profile has risen, so to speak?
Yeah, I think just out of the blue one time, I was going to Salt Lake City, and Katherine Heigl and her husband, Josh Kelly, DM'd me, and they were like, hey, we're coming to the show. Want to know if you wanted to hang out? And I was like, okay. I didn't even know she was on Suits until this season. I finally caught up on that show, and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, she's doing that.
How was the hang after the show then in Salt Lake?
Oh, very fun. Anyone that's going to DM you to talk to you after a show is going to be the most down-to-earth person you can imagine.
You have Empty Nester on Netflix, which we talked about, just came out. You still have I Need You to Kill on Amazon, where you and Segura are touring, and you go through Asia. I've always wondered about doing these shows in non-English speaking countries. Do you feel like the crowd is Americans living in Asia, or was it more of Asians learning English or know English and want to get a taste of America, or a mix of both?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. So when we did Hong Kong, it was a lot of expats, and it was, Britain ruled Hong Kong, I think up until 99 maybe. Some of the signs are still in English, that kind of stuff. And then we went over to Singapore, and that's just a bunch of young people that are traveling. But most people know English, right? Because they want to watch American movies and they want to listen to American music. So a lot of the young people know English. I think it's just America that's like, no, I know English. That's good enough for me. It's pretty simple when you go to countries to find an English-speaking comedy show.
I feel a little embarrassed asking this question. I feel like they're kind of the easy ones, and a beginner interview would ask these. But the tattoos, they don't look super, super old. How long have you had the forearm tattoos, and do you have more than that? I tried to find some old pictures of you, and I couldn't really find any good clean ones with the forearm showing, so I got super curious about how old they are.
Yeah, I think the one on my left arm is maybe 8 years. And then the one on my right arm is maybe 3, I think. Yeah. So I got into them in my right when I turned 40. I started getting tats. I'm getting ready for these grandkids that are eventually going to come because I want them to listen to me.
What is the one on the right?
It's a bunch of animal parables. So there's a battle of 2 wolves inside each of us. One of them represents the evil and one of them represents good, and which one wins, and it's the one you feed. So that parable. And then I have a flamingo on here because one time I was lost and I finally got cell service. They asked me where I was, and I said, there's 100 fake flamingos in this guy's yard. And the guy goes, I know where you are. I was 20 minutes away from all my buddies, so they had to come get me. And I didn't realize that flamingos are a sign of swingers. So I should have done some research before I put that on my forearm. But
hey, can you pick me up? I'm at the swingers paradise. Yeah, and then you get it tattooed, and people are like, hey, I'd love to meet you after the show. You're like, let's calm down a little bit.
Yeah, they just bring a bowl over for my keys, and I'm all set.
So how long have you known Segura? Because that goes back to the I Need You to Kill days. That's quite a few years old. How long have you guys been touring together and doing comedy?
Well, we met on the flight from Seattle to Hong Kong for that tour. We had never met before. We became quick friends, and on the documentary, you can watch it. It was very fun, and we've been friends ever since. Actually today, my Your Mom's House episode comes out. When I was down there doing Rogan, I popped into their studios and hung out for a little bit too.
How many of those have you done? Because you've been on quite a few of them.
Yeah, Your Mom's House, maybe this is my 5th one, I think.
Do you feel a huge pop social media-wise when you do something like Rogan or Your Mom's House? Is it noticeable right away?
Yeah, you can definitely tell that these guys have humongous followings, and that, anybody that likes you from being on there will just come over and start following you too. So it's definitely worth it.
Well, that's I Need You to Kill on Amazon, Empty Nester on Netflix right now. Also, he's got 2 podcasts, Pretend Problems with Chelsea and then The Middle of Somewhere. Chad, man, it's nice to talk to you today, and good luck with the comedy tour.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you having me on.